The world is crying to Madagascar with the Jews in order that we finally may get peace on earth. Population, let's see, estimated 1 million. The Jews are the children of the devil, according to the Gospel of St. John. And I can't tell what that number is. Something 44, maybe 3 or 44 or 8, 44. Communism is Judaism. That's Karl Marx. He says that because Karl Marx was a Jew and he couldn't push Zionism because people rejected it. So he came up with communism. It was John 8 and 44. You are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he stood not in the truth, because the truth is not in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father thereof. Here's the thing, right? Who committed the first murder? But it doesn't say who committed the first murder. He was the first one to murder. It says he was a murderer from the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning, who committed the first murder? Let's see. See, I put in, did the devil ever murder anyone? And they're not giving me a straight answer. This one here says, we will be like angels, yet Lucifer was an angel, and he sinned in heaven. He even committed murder. The devil and Lucifer are not the same. He committed murder. And what is Jesus? This is what Jesus said when he was talking about Lucifer, who became the devil. Where's the proof that he became the devil? See, with this, you just got to take a lot of faith, right, and just believe that what they're telling you is the truth. Because if you ask them this, they'll make it sound like they're all one the same. Lucifer, Baal, Rembrandt, Moloch, Azazel, they're all supposed to be the same thing. They're all just the devil, just different names. Yeah, no. I know that's how, man. Let's see, in many countries, especially in the past, the only way to get to the throne was to kill the person already on it. When Lucifer said, I will exalt my throne above God, he wanted to eliminate God and take his place. When Satan led people to, let's see, Jesus, crucified Jesus on the cross, he was showing the universe the heart of his rebellion. These are two different beings, which was murder. These are two different beings. He also was showing the universe what he wanted to do to God high in heaven had he been given the opportunity. This is garbage. I mean, I'm not a defender of Satan. I'm not a defender of Lucifer. But I'm like, tell you who you. This is garbage. A sucker's gonna sit there and read this and say, "Oh my gosh, that's the end." So here it is, the Madagascar plan. I was listening to the French Rebellion podcast, and I think it was about 13 years ago they did a podcast, and that's where I had heard about that Hitler planned to send Jews to Madagascar, and I thought nothing of it because I didn't know any of the stuff I know now, So I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm going over this stuff now, and I wanted to share it. So here we go.
The Madagascar Plan was a plan to forcibly relocate the Jewish population of Europe to the island of Madagascar, which was proposed by the Nazi German government. Franz Rademacher, head of the Jewish department of the German Foreign Office, proposed the idea in June 1940, shortly before the fall of France. The proposal called for the handing over of control of Madagascar, then a French colony, to Germany as part of the eventual peace terms. The idea of resettling Polish Jews in Madagascar was investigated by the Polish government in 1937, 1-2, but the task force sent to evaluate the island's potential determined that only 5,000 to 7,000 families could be accommodated, or even as few as 500 families by some estimates, because efforts by the Nazis to encourage the emigration of the Jewish population from Germany before World War II were only partially successful. The idea of deporting Jews to Madagascar was revived by the Nazi government in 1940. Rademacher recommended on 3 June 1940 that Madagascar should be made available as a destination for the Jews of Europe. With Adolf Hitler's approval, Adolf Eichmann released a memorandum on 15 August 1940 calling for the resettlement of 1 million Jews per year for 4 years, with the island being governed as a police state under the SS. They assumed that many Jews would succumb to its harsh conditions should the plan be implemented. 5. The plan was not viable when proposed due to the British naval blockade. It was postponed after the Nazis lost the Battle of Britain in September 1940, and it was permanently shelved in 1942 with the commencement of the final solution. The policy of systematic genocide of Jews, towards which it had functioned as an important psychological step. 6. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, there were a number of resettlement plans for European Jews that were precursors to the Madagascar Plan. Paul de Lagarde, an Orientalist scholar, first suggested evacuating the European Jews to Madagascar in his 1878 work Deutsche Schriften, German Writings, 7-8. Members of the Zionist movement in 1904-1905 seriously debated the British Uganda program, by which Russian Jews, who were in immediate danger from ongoing pogroms, would be settled in the East Africa Protectorate, modern-day Kenya, which was part of the British Empire at the time. The plan was later rejected as unworkable by the Zionist Congress. 9. Adherents of territorialism split off from the main Zionist movement and continued to search for a location where Jews might settle and create a state, or at least an autonomous area. 10. The idea of Jewish resettlement in Madagascar was promoted by British anti-Semites Henry Hamilton Beamish, Arnold Leese, and others.
There's a contradiction there, because you said in the beginning that this was proposed by that Frank whatever Reddish dead Doik guy, right? And now it's being proposed by these anti-Semitic British, whatever his name is, Henry Hamilton. But that's not the big thing here. Not even the Russians, Jews, that they wanted to send to Uganda, right? Go back up here. The plan for European Jews that were proposed to Madagascar's plan, Paul de Lagarde, or an Oriental scholar. Now you gotta ask yourself something, right? What is an Oriental scholar doing, coming up with plans to send Caucasians, right? The Khazars to Madagascar. Again, what is an Oriental scholar doing worrying about Caucasians? Oh, let's see. Because remember, we just read about the Orientals, right? In the Philippines. Hold on, they're not gonna tell us here. They're just gonna pretend like the. Watch this. Watch this. Because don't make me show the picture of from that book, Nazi World War III.
Oriental is a province in the Philippines located in the central Visayas region.
Yeah. So how can you have an island that you capture, that you're calling the people on the island dark-skinned, right? Which we know what that means. That means he didn't look like the people we would call the Filipino people today. So you call those people the Negro Orientals. You have another half that's what the Negro Oriental Lin, right? Two groups that were brought together but then separated. Why are they? You gotta ask yourself, why are they Shem and Ham living on the same island? But anyways, let's look at this page because I just want to do this. Remember this? This was from the Nazi World War III. And that's supposed to be Hitler way up there at the top in this corner, way up here, right here, doing a documentary. And he calls them the Orientals. This man right here, this face right here, he says that's the Oriental. Not him. So again, what is a man who works studying these people doing, sending these people to Madagascar? That's what you want us to believe. That someone who spends their time studying the history of these people, collecting their artworks, collecting their books, collecting their writings. I mean, why in our time are we not looking into the Oriental societies? Why are we not going back and seeing what they found to help fill in the answers? But again, someone who's supposed to be studying him, you're telling us is sending him to Madagascar to live amongst the people that were already there, that are melanated. Right. Right.
British anti-Semites Henry Hamilton Beamish, Arnold Leese, and others. 11. With the cooperation of the French. The Polish government commissioned a task force in 1937 to examine the possibility of settling Polish Jews on the island. 2. The head of the commission, Mieczysław Lepecki, place, felt the island could accommodate 5,000 to 7,000 families, but Jewish members of the group estimated that, because of the climate and poor infrastructure, only 500 or even fewer families could safely be accommodated. 1:12a. Racism and anti-Semitism were basic tenets of the Nazi Party and the Nazi government. 13. Discrimination and violent attacks against Jews began immediately after the seizure of power in 1933. 14. Violence and economic pressure were used by the Nazis to encourage Jews to voluntarily leave the country. 15. By 1939, around 250,000 of Germany's 437,000 Jews had emigrated to the United States, Argentina, the United Kingdom, and other countries, as well as the British Mandate of Palestine. 16. 17. The Nazi leadership seized on the idea of deporting the remaining German Jews abroad. Barren, unproductive lands were viewed as appropriate destinations as this would prevent the deportees from flourishing in their new location. 18. In his May 1940 memorandum to Hitler concerning the treatment of the alien population in the East, Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler declared that he hoped to see the term Jew completely eliminated through the massive immigration of all Jews to Africa or some other colony. 19.
To where? Because this is important. Because the next article I'm going to show you after this is going to tie this all together. So don't forget, his letter says that they were immigrating with an M, with an I, not an E. All right, the Jews to Africa and other colonies. We're ready for this? Ready? Ooh.
Initial discussions began to take place in 1938 among Nazi ideologues such as Julius Streicher, Hermann Göring, Alfred Rosenberg, and Joachim von Ribbentrop. 10% of Jews under German jurisdiction by that date were Polish nationals. Józef Lipski, the Polish ambassador to Germany, expressed his country's reluctance to take them back, and the Polish government decreed that Polish passport holders would not be permitted to return except under specific conditions. 21. When Ribbentrop raised the matter with French Foreign Minister Georges Bonnet in December of that year, Bonnet expressed French reluctance to receive more German Jews and inquired if measures could be taken to prevent their arrival. France itself was contemplating how to deport some 10,000 Jews and considered whether Madagascar might be an appropriate destination. 22. Planning for German deportations to Madagascar formally began. In 1940, 23, Franz Rademacher, recently appointed head of the Jewish Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, forwarded on the 3rd of June to his superior, the diplomat Martin Luther, a memorandum on the fate of the Jews. 1. Rademacher said, "The desirable solution is, all Jews out of Europe." 19. He briefly considered Palestine as a destination, but deemed it unsuitable, as he considered it undesirable that a strong Jewish state should be created in the Middle East. In addition, Palestine was under British control at the time. 24. Rademacher recommended that the French colony of Madagascar should be made available as a destination for the Jews of Europe as one of the terms of the surrender of France, which the Germans had invaded on the 10th of May 1940. 25. The resettled Jews, noted Rademacher, could be used as hostages to ensure future good behavior of their racial comrades in America. 19. The plan was developed by Referat D3 of the Abteilung Deutschland.
Comrade. Among men, collection of a few members of an organization, an old college comrade, a fellow soldier, or a member of an army force. So future good behavior of their racial comrades in America. And then Martin Luther, and they're talking about that one guy that supposedly was like a minister over there. They talk about it in that book. He talks about the conditions the Jews were, how he couldn't believe these people were the people of God. How they had money and they would still cheat people out of money, and they were always flatulent, and that makes me think of like Whoopi Goldberg, right? Isn't that one of the knocks on her is that she's always passing gas and on The View? Think about Eddie Murphy and the Nutty Professor. What's the one thing, one of the scenes that you'll always remember is when he's playing all the parts and he's, getting people to laugh because he's, just ripping them. So I think we're gonna stop with this. But so Jews living in Madagascar, the Jerusalem Post, the secret of Malaysian Jews of Madagascar. See, now I think that's interesting because I'm telling you, going back and looking into the history of the Indian Ocean, I keep running into this, the Malaysians. And of course you gotta put in like the melanated ones, the Negro Malaysians. Then you get like the people in the Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, what's the other place? Fiji. People that look like that. But there's something about that language. I just don't know how to put it into words, but like when you did with I am that I am. Haya haya. When you write it backwards, you seen it comes out and it's what is it? father. It was father, it was papa. One of them, father or it was papa. And it's makes me wonder. Makes me wonder. This is interesting. You put in their secret, and look where they show up. Look what shows up to me. You would think it would be, the Adam Sandler looking guy, or the what's the guy there, the Seinfeld guy. Nope. Now, and isn't that interesting? Look, why does he shave off his mustache? That child's darker than both of them too. Look at that. I wonder why he shaves off his mustache like he's Amish. Because I always say that because hold on. I say that because of this, right? I say it because I like to wear my mustache low, and I was just so I was wondering, like, I wonder what's up with that. I mean, I know what's his name there, that the guy from I'm Just Here to Make You Think's always telling you, he always says you can't trust a man with no mustache. He said that was but I mean, me, I do it, and because it just gets in the way sometimes. So I was just like, hey, I wonder why he's doing that too.
Are most Malagasys the descendants of ancient Israelites, and who are the few Jews living there now? Most Americans, Europeans and Israelis come to Madagascar looking for lemurs. I have come to find an even more exotic population, Malagasy Jews. I have found them, and, with them, indeed, thanks to them, I have encountered the lemurs, as well. Not that the Jews are as geographically remote as the lemurs, those funky, little primates uniquely indigenous to Madagascar. But the Jews are even more discreet. Lemurs have become so habituated to human visitation that, up in their trees, they chew their bamboo shoots within close range of camera-wielding tourists. And there is no mistaking a lemur once you have chanced upon one in the forest. But in Antananarivo, the capital city, you might not realize that the computer technician, the school teacher, the chef, or the painter that you encounter during the week follow the tenets of the Talmud. Although if you look carefully at the latter, you will recognize his piyot, or earlocks. On Shabbat, however, watch out, you are in for a cross-cultural experience more likely to blow your Semitic mind than any forest safari search for primates. It especially helps if you know some French. The official language, along with Malagasy, of this once recalcitrant, currently ambivalent, former colony of France. Even in Madagascar, you cannot lump all Jews into a single category. There are 5 generic families of lemurs, 2, by the way, and more than 100 distinct species. Although the observant Malagasy Jews number barely 100, they confirm the adage, 2 Jews, 3 synagogues. Their religious disputes are no less intense than in the Holy Land itself. Should they formally undergo conversion, although they daven in Hebrew more proficiently than most diaspora Jews, just to satisfy the expectations of overseas rabbinates? Should they contemplate Aliyah, or rather persist in divinely ordained Galut until the Messiah finally comes? Is Israel itself a legitimate Jewish state? Or is it an impostor founded and maintained by secularists who have little true regard for Torah? Are godless Zionists conspiring to strip Malagasy Jews of their faith by encouraging relocation to Israel to become secular Israelis? Move over. Mea Shearim in Williamsburg, Antananarivo is the new capital of Jewish dispute.
So, I think that's interesting. Let's see if they talk about the let's see. I think we'll stop after we get to them, because I want to show you the Africans. So let's see here.
Then there are the less lofty, but no less disputatious, disagreements. Should their women be allowed to wear pants at all? What about in the synagogue? Is it truly proper for the insignia of the Zionist state, the Star of David, to be emblazoned on the tallit? Descendants of Ali Torah, Alida Warit, who still today bear the titles of kings and scribes in the royal village of Vadamasina in Voapeno. They are supposedly in a position to reveal the Malagasy secret. Photo credit, William F. S. Miles. All these questions have created personal frictions. My wife was in tears when told she was no longer welcome in the synagogue, and an institutional rift. Followers of the president of the Jewish community of Madagascar, who used to worship in the president's home, are no longer welcome in the only other, and now solely functioning, synagogue on the island. The president's landlord finally put an end to religious congregation in his home from him. And yet, they managed to coexist. Where do they come from, these Jews? Are they ancient or are they new? Mainstream anthropologists will tell you that the Malagasy people are descendants of Indonesian seafarers who made their way westward thousands of years ago. Yet, there has also persisted the Malagasy secret that most Malagasys are descendants of ancient Israelites. Perhaps as far back as the search for the gold and rosewood required for the construction of King Solomon's temple. University of Antananarivo professor Lucian Razanadraokoto, sociologist, political scientist and philosopher, takes a middle position, averring that around the 10th century, Muslim merchants whose predecessors had been compelled to convert from Judaism settled the eastern range of the island. With him, I have come to the sacred rock of Alakamisi Ambohimaha, where some can discern Hebrew letters engraved halfway up a tremendous boulder. And at his urging of him, I have come to the remote southeastern edge of the island to the royal village of Vadamasina, in Voapeno, to meet with the kings and scribes who are supposedly in a position to reveal the Malagasy secret. Our ancestor was a Lidawarit, they tell me, and my companion, Ashri Daves, president of the Jewish community of Madagascar. He was originally from Jerusalem, and his first language was Hebrew. This is why a variation of the word Torah became embedded in his name. Romans attacked Jerusalem, with dogs, even, and so he fled to Mecca, where he began to speak Arabic. It is there that he also learned the Koran, which he brought to Madagascar. But a Lidawarit still used the Torah Moshe, the teaching of Moses. Many Malagasys will swear that the staff of Moses and a fragment of the Ten Commandments are hidden in Vadamasina. But the assembled notables deny this, claiming the sacred objects were lost in fire, during the savage French colonial repression of the pro-independence rebellion of 1947. This chronology, of course, does not add up. Destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans predated Islam by over half a millennium. And how a Lidawarit, or any other ancestor, had obtained possession of Moses' staff and part of the tablets is also inexplicable. But, if you think this remote Hebraic history is implausible, consider what the Aaronites of Manansara provide in the way of their Genesis. That's right, Aaronites, descendants of Moses' brother, who regularly practice animal sacrifice a la Leviticus, with designated high priests and designated Levite assistants. I arrived in Manansara, just when two such sacrifices were taking place. Due to my impurity, Aaronite leader Roger Randrianamanana kept us at a respectful distance during the priestly slaughtering itself. But we were permitted to approach during the butchering that immediately followed. Manansara is only 40 kilometers from the capital, but it is a world apart, and not only on account of the unpaved roads that make the trip take several hours. His Israelite ancestors are said to have arrived by canoe on the northern coast of the island, transported by divine waves and currents, when priests prophesied an impending flood. Resettled in the center of the island, their descendants are aware that there are Jews in the world who follow rituals different from those practiced by Moses and Aaron, but that does not prevent us from remaining cousins. If not frères, brothers. Before meeting Roger the Aaronite, I imagined him as an elderly, bearded, robed ascetic with little knowledge of or interest in the outside world. Instead, I encountered a youthful, energetic mayor with short-cropped hair running for re-election, who combined my initiation into Aaronism with campaign stumping via a four-wheeled drive caravan blaring an election jingle composed especially for him. His logo of him? A traditional Malagasy harp within a Star of David. Roger, a true operator, has even been to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to represent his District DL in the International Folk Art Market, and insists that I become his DL, technico-political advisor DL. He is indeed a with it Aaronite. There are other legends of Israelite ancestry among the Malagasy people. French scholar Edith Bruder has published an invaluable compendium of the various accounts of these descendants of David of Madagascar, written versions of which date back to mid-17th century. European explorers and travelers. On the internet, one can find a host of modern-day Malagasy proponents of the, now not-so-secret, Malagasy secret of Israelite origins. Unfortunately, writes University of Utah professor Nathan DeVere, an Israeli-American who preceded me to Madagascar, there is no way to prove that Malagasys thought of themselves as God's chosen people before the Bible, or the European missionaries and explorers for whom the Bible was God's word, suggested the notion to them.
Yeah, but you can still look at the punishments that the people of Madagascar received and match it biblically. Like I said, go back and look at how the Spaniards treated the people of Madagascar, dashing their like when the Spaniards raped the women of Madagascar after killing most of the men, right? If the child came out looking like the mother, they would smack the child's head against rocks and let their dogs eat it. Where have we heard that before? If the child coming out looking like the father, then the child was allowed to live. Who else did this? The Spaniards wrote that the island was being ruled by princes. Sounds like Judah to me.
Even more unfortunate, at least for those Malagasy who are overcoming tremendous obstacles to learn Hebrew and practice Rabbinic Judaism, are the many Malagasy who proudly wear the mantle of Israelite, Aaronite, or Jew, while also adhering to incompatible beliefs and rituals, such as Jesus as Messiah, or Judaism means animal sacrifice. Then there are the pseudo-Kabbalistic charlatans who traffic in secret knowledge of Paleo-Hebrew and other gematriatic acrobatics to promise prosperity and or spiritual transcendence. Such confusions of identity, especially regarding so-called Messianic Jews, are not unique to Madagascar. I encountered similar frustrations while encountering the Jubos, Igbo Jews, of Nigeria. Both in Madagascar and Nigeria, many former Roman Catholics and Protestants followed the pathway of Messianic Judaism before discovering how Judaism is understood and practiced in the world at large, and discarding Christ from their theology. But since vocal pro-Israel kippah and tallit-wearing male messianics and their young female counterparts persist, negotiating the boundaries of African and Indian Ocean Judaism becomes delicate, indeed.
So, I'm going to stop there, because I just can't stand the arguments. But yeah, if the child came out looking like this, chances are he looks more like the Spanish father, and he got to live. So, I hope you found this interesting. Like I said, I just remembered this And this was like from years ago, so